Good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, December the 1st, 2020. It is currently 9:48 a.m. Central Time, and we're going to put this episode in the category of I don't want to, but I need to. I don't want to, but I need to. I don't want to be talking about what we're going to be talking about. I really don't. There's so many other issues that I would prefer to talk about, but I feel I need to. No, in fact, we should change that. I don't want to, but I have to. I must talk about what we're going to be talking about today. And the reason I have to, the reason I must, the reason it's a necessity is because I believe that there is so much craziness floating around within the Christian world that someone has to try to turn on the microphone and go, hey, could we, try to be rational, thoughtful Christians who pursue truth, not lies, that as Christians we have a moral responsibility not to bear false witness, not to put forth lying and deceit and misrepresent things, because that is so prevalent within some of the Christian world, then I feel then I must turn on the microphone and try to correct some of that craziness that is out there. And I don't want to. And the reason why is because there's right here, sitting here next to me is The Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis. I want to start working on the chapter about avoiding rash judgment. That's what I would like to talk about. Avoiding rash judgment. Now, that may be applicable to what we're getting ready to talk about. It may be applicable, but that's what I would rather do. I'd rather have a devotional study on Scripture. I would rather work on Genesis chapter 12 for the VBC Bible Institute. There's so many other things. We need to continue looking at the Southwest Believers Convention, Kenneth Copeland's convention. We're analyzing the sermons from that convention. There's other things I would like to do, but I don't feel like I have a choice here. I really don't. And the reason I don't feel like I have a choice is because I keep hearing Christian podcasts talking about a very serious subject and saying things that I think are some of them are just absolutely crazy. And some of the things they're saying, I just think is misleading and not being fair and accurate with the information. So let's get this out of the way. Let's take care of this. I know it's going to create controversy. I know these are the kinds of episodes. It's so sad. You do Bible teaching and you almost can't get a comment. And then you deal with something controversial and then boom, the numbers of listens are in the thousands. And then you get hundreds of emails and which then, there's a part of you that says, well, I need to deal with the controversial subjects. But no, if there's ever a time we need to get back to the Scriptures, it's right now. But here I am. We got to talk about this. So let me explain. Currently, I know you may not be aware of this, but currently we are living through a pandemic, right? COVID-19. Over 1 million people have died worldwide. I think we're over 230. I think we're fast approaching 250,000 deaths here in the United States of America. I just look at the headline. Let me just do that really quick. If I pick up my iPad right here and look at the headline, hospitalizations. And I think this is just for the United States of America. Hospitalizations near 100,000. Now we're fast approaching a major crisis for the healthcare system here in the United States of America because it's going to be overwhelmed with COVID cases. And if every indicator that I keep reading is correct, if all of the predictions are correct, in the next 7 to 14 days, we're going to see another massive surge, another massive wave of COVID cases. And it could overwhelm the healthcare system in many parts of the country, which could lead to a major catastrophic situation. Now, I know that all sounds really bad, and I'm hoping the predictions are wrong. I'm hoping everyone traveling for Thanksgiving that nothing will come out of that. But so far, everything that we have seen in regards to COVID, it's not going to just be okay. It's going to be bad. There are states and cities already talking about bringing in restrictions and lockdowns and all, and people are debating and arguing, wear a mask, don't wear a mask, and all, all of the things that have been happening all through 2020. So the COVID situation is still very present, right? It's still very present. And whenever you talk to people and you talk about what are we going to do about this COVID situation, you end up with a couple of kind of ideas, right? You've got some people who say, look, we should do nothing. It's not that serious. No matter how many people die, they either say the numbers aren't real, it's not that bad, the flu is worse, this is all hype, this is all being done to destroy Trump and to set up, us being taken over by tyrants to take away all of our freedoms. So we should just do nothing, not wear a mask, not social distance, not stop gathering. We should continue to gather, do what we want, and just go on with our life. And if people die, people die. That's almost one mentality, because they don't really believe that many people are dying, no matter what the numbers say. They say they'll tell you that the death certificates are fraudulent, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You get the idea. We'll put them in the do nothing camp. All right. The other camp is, we should at least wear a mask and social distance. We should at least wear a mask and social distance. We should do that. Now the do nothing will be like, nope, no mask, no social distancing. So there's one camp will at least wear a mask and social distancing. No lockdown. We keep everything open. We still, gather in large groups. Just wear a mask and social distance. Now, I don't know how you gather in a large group in social distance, but they'll say, in other words, you can keep things open. Just try to do social distancing to the best of your ability. All right. So this will be like do nothing, and the other one will be like at least social distance and wear a mask, but no lockdown. Right. Then the third group is no. Lock things down, wear a mask, social distance. We've got to get this under control. So do nothing. Well, social distance, wear a mask, but no lockdown. Or lockdown, wear a mask, and social distance. Okay. Now, those are radically different approaches. And of course, everyone is fighting and arguing because everyone believes their perspective is right. And then they all throw out some kind of statistic, or they have a YouTube video proving their point, or they have some information from their third cousin that they haven't seen in 70 years who supposedly works in a hospital, who showed them a YouTube video of them, fraudulently filling out death certificates. Whatever the case may be, you've seen it all, right? So do nothing. Do some things, but no, don't go to that dreaded lockdown. And then the other is lockdown and do everything. All right. 3 very different groups. I probably could break it down even more, but there you go. 3 basic groups. Now, what's looming, what's ultimately, what kind of transcends all of these groups is the idea by some that the ultimate solution, the only way this is ultimately going to end, is a vaccine. That a vaccine is fast, it's on its way. It's going to be here before we know it. And once that vaccine is made available, we can finally put an end to COVID-19. Then we don't have to worry about masks. We don't have to worry about social distancing. We can go back and gather into large crowds. Everything can get back to normal. And the vaccine is the solution. All right. But here's the problem. Just like you have different groups, right? You have the group do nothing. You have the group do something. You have the group do everything. I guess that's a good way to put it. Guess what happens once the vaccine arrives? You're going to have different groups. And here's going to be the different groups. Never taking the vaccine. Don't trust it. And then they have all of their reasons, right? And amongst their reasons are, and I'm not making these things up, that the vaccines contain fetal tissue. That's one group. We listened to an audio from a Catholic bishop saying, hey, we cannot get this vaccine. It contains fetal tissue, stem cells from aborted babies. We can't do this. Stay away from this. Fetal stem cells, all the different things they claim. It just has fetal tissue from aborted babies, and we cannot participate in it. It's unethical. It's wrong. So never getting the vaccine. Never. It's wrong. It would be unethical. It would be ungodly for a Christian to do so. All right. So that's, again, this is still in that group of never getting the vaccine, but that's one of the reasons. Another reason, the vaccine contains, this is actually heard on a Christian podcast, nano robots. right? These little nano robots, and the vaccine's going to inject them into our bodies. Then 5G is going to activate those nano robots, and this will completely rewrite your DNA, make you less than human, and then it will force you to submit ultimately to the Antichrist and to the New World Order that's going to be established. All right. So it contains fetal tissue from aborted babies, so can't get the vaccine. Number two, it contains nanorobots that are going to be activated by 5G. And I know you may be laughing, but this is literally what I've heard on some Christian podcasts. All right. Number three, the vaccine is going to contain basically a chip that's going to be placed inside your body so that they can track you, and that will be ultimately used to determine what you can buy and sell. So basically, it's the mark of the beast. All right. So let's go through these again. All right. So when it comes to COVID-19, you got different perspectives. You've got the do nothing, do something, do everything groups. But then ultimately you've got the vaccine that's supposed to be the solution. But once you start talking about the vaccine, people break into different groups again. And the one group is, I'm never getting the vaccine. And the reasons offered is it contains fetal tissue from aborted babies. It contains nanorobots that's going to be injected into my body and going to be activated by 5G to control me. Number three, it contains a chip that's going to be put in my body so they can track me, and it's going to be used for buying and selling. It's the mark of the beast. Next, the vaccine is being developed, and sometimes I'll throw out Bill Gates' name. It's being developed ultimately to infect and kill us. It's not there to stop. It may stop COVID, but it's ultimately there to kill us. It's going to create all kinds of other genetical problems, medical problems, and it's ultimately there to thin out the population. Right? Everyone's worried about overpopulation, and this is being developed by the elites, whichever group you want to, the Illuminati, whomever you want to throw in as being in charge. And they're going to use this to kill people. And so that the vaccine is actually going to kill large numbers of people, you should not get it. Right? And then there's another group. I'm trying to go through all of these as carefully as I can. Another group who says, you know what? Well, we'll put them in a different category, all right? So there we have it. So there is, I'm never going to get it. I'm never going to get it, all right? I'm never going to get it, and their arguments contains aborted tissue from, or it contains tissue from aborted babies, if I can speak correctly this morning. It contains nanorobots that will be activated by 5G. It contains basically a chip that will track you and use them for buying or selling. So it's the mark of the beast. Its ultimate design is to hurt and to kill people. So therefore, you can't get it. And I guess we'll throw this one in there for never going to get the vaccine. It's not safe. It's just not safe. It's not safe. So I'm never going to get it. So, and there's all the reasons. So there's the never gonna get the vaccine. Then there's the group that says, you know what? I'm going to wait and see. I'm not going to get it for a year. I'm not going to get it for 2 years. I'm not going to get the vaccine for a year or 2 years because I want to make sure that there's no negative side effects. All right. So you've got, I'm never going to get it. And you've got, I'm going to wait and see. And the wait and see, there's a lot of disagreement amongst the people. We were talking in it with my family, what we're going to do and how we're going to work through this. And obviously my family, they know someone who took a vaccine and something really, really bad happened to them. That would be me, all right? All my neurological problems that I have all stem from a needle being stuck in my arm in January of 2003. 72 hours later, they called it code blue. I had a massive seizure. I thought some people thought it was the end. I ended up in a hospital, don't know who or what's going on. And ever since that day, seizure after seizure, I can't even count how many seizures I've had, and some of the neurological issues that I experience every single day. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I experience them all because of a vaccine. The anthrax vaccine that I was forced to get because I was going to be sent to an undisclosed location somewhere in Iraq to set up a decon center because we thought that they were going to use weapons of mass destruction, chemical weapons. All right. So I could tell you the whole story, but I witnessed it. So, I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm a little concerned. And one of the reasons I'm concerned is since that happened to me, the military said I can no longer get any vaccines. I couldn't even get a flu vaccine. They banned me from ever having another needle stuck in my arm for anything, right? Because of how bad my situation was. And it is. I experience it every day. Right now, I'm experiencing some of the issues because I get these. I can't even explain. Basically since I've gotten that shot, I've never gone 1 second of one day without a massive headache. I live with a massive headache. It never stops. It never goes away. Nothing lessens the pain. Nothing. So I live that way. So my family has seen that. So there within my family, there's a hesitancy. The hesitancy is not based on wild conspiracy theories. It's based off a personal experience. Now, remember, my personal experience, though, is not the thing that determines what reality is. It's my experience in a limited situation. Whenever you have vaccines, this is very important. When you have medications of any kind, you see the medication commercials, right? Here's the medication. Here's what it's supposed to fix. However, there are some possible negative side effects, and they list those possible negative side effects. Why did they list those possible negative side effects? Because obviously some people had experienced those. With any vaccine, with any medication, there will be those who it will not work out well for them. Now, how many it's going to be, that's what you have to kind of wait and see. So there's going to be the wait and see crowd. Right? Now, that leads to the third group. So the first group, never getting the vaccine. Second group is I'll wait and see. And the third group is give me the vaccine right now. You make it available. I will line up. I make it because I want this whole COVID situation to go away and nothing. We're not going to social distance. We're not going to wear a mask. We're not going to lock down. So I want the vaccine to get rid of it. Now, where do you fit in all of these different views? Now, here's the thing. I completely understand the wait and see crowd. I completely understand anyone who's a little concerned about the vaccine. I can understand the people who are like, no, give me the vaccine because we've got to get the country open again. We can't continue like this. We can't destroy the healthcare system. We can't go on another year with this happening. We've got to stop this. I can understand that perspective. They may even acknowledge there's a possible risk, but they're willing to take it. What I cannot understand is that I'm never going to get the vaccine crowd if their reasons are based off fraudulent information, if it's based off conspiratorial information, if it's based off craziness. That I can't understand. I can't. And so don't email me arguing with me about vaccines. I'm aware of the dangers that can happen to a vaccine. I'm experiencing right now. You can't even comprehend the amount of the headache I have right now. Okay, it's not a great. I have a feeling by the end of this day I'll end up having a seizure because sometimes I can kind of tell. So don't sit there and be all condescending and rude and like I don't understand. Oh, I understand. But I also understand vaccines have done great, wonderful things in the history of mankind to wipe out and control diseases, okay? And you can give me all your conspiratorial videos. I understand that. But, yeah, vaccines have done wonderful things. You cannot be denied. And if we're facing a pandemic and nobody wants to wear a mask, nobody wants to social distance, and no one wants to lock down, then really the solution comes down to vaccine or do nothing. Well, if you do nothing and the medical healthcare system is about to collapse, the do nothing is going to stop being an option. So then what's your option? You don't want to wear a mask. You don't want a social distance. You don't want a lockdown. And I'm assuming you don't want the healthcare system to collapse. So you're going to be left with very few options. So here's the thing. My job as a Christian is, and I'm not worried about the world, but for all Christians, I want to make sure that whatever you decide, you do so based off truth and accurate information, and that you do not, I repeat, you do not, as a Christian, hop on social media spreading lies, misinformation, fraudulent information. You're bearing false witness, and you're gossiping and slandering people, groups, companies about things you don't even know what you're talking about. That makes you the sinner. That makes you the liar. That makes you guilty. And that's what I have to work to try to do. So I'm going to play for you some clips regarding to the soon coming COVID-19 vaccine. Now, we've already talked about the fetal tissue issue. We've already done a program about that. We listened to a Catholic bishop say it was there. Then I did as much research as I could from at least Pfizer, them saying, look, it contains none. Then we have, I think Moderna said it contains none. There's a third one that I can't say for sure, but we've already disproven what the Catholic bishop said. The Catholic bishop's information was clearly fraudulent, all right? And he never even provided evidence for his claims, which again, it's Christians out there spreading the false misinformation. Look, you may not want to get the vaccine. I understand that. Just acknowledge, and this is what's so funny. I'm not going to wear a mask because I have faith over fear. I'm not going to get the vaccine because I have fear over faith. Like, what is it? Hey, I'm not going to wear a mask because I have faith over fear. Well, okay. Well, I'm not going to get the vaccine, I guess, because faith over fear. I guess you could work it that way. I have faith over fear. I don't need a vaccine. But I think in some cases, if people are honest, they're just afraid. And I can understand. I'm afraid. I don't know what will happen to me. Look, at some point, I'm assuming I'm going to have to get the vaccine because we can't continue this way. I don't even know if I'll be allowed to get the vaccine. Let's be honest. Well, now that I'm not seeing military doctors, the civilian doctor will probably tell me to do so. But I'm afraid of what will happen to me. I am. I don't know what will happen. Okay, but I may have no choice. I may have no choice in the matter. So we're going to have to wait and see. But what I want to do, so we've kind of done, we've taken care of, I think, unless more information comes forward. Now, look, if more information comes forward, I'll be the first one to say, hey, wait a minute, guys. This does contain fetal tissue from aborted babies. And then we'll have to look at how do we view this ethically? How do we deal with this? What's going to be our standard? Are we going to be consistent? Because in many cases, people won't get a vaccine because they say it contains the fetal tissue from an aborted baby, but they pursue other treatments that are also developed through maybe stem cells of an aborted baby. Well, wait a minute, you can't say no to a vaccine, but then over here you're going to accept some kind of care that was developed through the same concept, same idea. You've got to be consistent, and you got to be, if you're going to make an ethical line in the sand, you got to then stay on the right side of that line, and you can't just cross it whenever it's convenient to you. You can't do that. Sometimes I think people just make excuses for why they don't do something instead of just being honest. Just be honest, all right? So we have to be accurate. So here's what I've got. I've got the Breakpoint podcast. They just talked about the vaccine. And I've got a discussion about the temperature in which they have to keep this vaccine at. It seems to be this crazy cold temperature which this vaccine must be stored at, and people are saying and what Christians are claiming, some Christians, is that it has to be stored at this temperature because of the nanorobots. All right, so we're going to try to find out exactly why it has to be stored at this temperature, just to try to get the most accurate information out there possible. My job is to give you accurate information so that you base your decision on accurate information, not fraudulent information, and that you're not sharing fraudulent information. We have to talk about this. Look, I don't want to, but I have to talk about this to try to ensure that there's a voice out there somewhere trying to lead people in the right direction. And that's all I'm going to try to do. I'm going to try to be as accurate and fair as I can be. So let's go to the Breakpoint podcast. This aired over the weekend. Here we go.
Well, speaking of, loving children, honoring them as God's gifts, there's a sort of a tough issue to deal with as we come to what could potentially be the resolution of the whole COVID-19 pandemic, and that's the arrival of a vaccine, right? The arrival of a means of just putting an end to this and immunizing people en masse. And the question is, of the 3 vaccine lines that are coming out from Pfizer, Moderna, and Oxford University, are they ethical? There have been questions hanging around them about the use of fetal tissue in the development and production and design of these vaccines. And so there's a headline from Christian Headlines, and they actually quote the Lozier Institute, which is a pro-life think tank, and the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. And both have weighed in and said that the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines are looking ethically acceptable. They're not employing new lines of fetal tissue, those sorts of things. But they do sound the alarm about the Oxford University vaccine, saying that this one used fetal tissue in the design and development and production phases, all three. So let's talk about that and ask some of the questions about, what we should be thinking about as these vaccines come online.
All right, now let's stop right there. So 3 lines of vaccines, Pfizer, Moderna, seem to be ethically acceptable. Pro-life groups are saying that. Even the Council for Catholic Bishops are saying that. I don't know why we had a Catholic bishop saying completely opposite of that, but okay, maybe we'll get some clarification there. I doubt we ever will. It's probably some bishop just doing his own thing. But the third one, I think they said the Oxford one, possibly does. Now, here's going to be the ethical question. Are you going to know which one you're getting? Are you going to know? Are all 3 going to be made available? Those are things we're going to have to try to figure out. So when people are saying they do, if you're going to out there saying they do contain fetal tissue from an aborted baby, whoa, slow down. You got to make sure you are accurate. The Pfizer and Moderna do not. It seems the one from Oxford maybe does. You just got to be accurate and fair and consistent and make sure whatever decision you make, you do so based off facts, not hearsay and misinformation. Let's see how they answer these problems.
This is one of those issues that is the definition of the idea of moral complicity. There's just layer upon layer upon layer of ethical questions. And also, I guess a better way to say it is unethical practices that the cat has been out of the bag for so long, right? And so that it makes these things very complicated. And there's also, I think, a kind of a built-in impulse that many of us have to not want these things to be ethical in the first place, because it allows us, either because of, positions that we take on the idea of vaccines altogether, or how this COVID-19 thing has been handled, or, somehow that it's something to do with the political of reopening or not reopening. And in other words, all of this stuff plays into how people, first of all, look at these issues, and then what information they choose to share. And one of the things that is at root here is you've got stem cell lines that were created from embryos that go all the way back to prior to President Bush's initial ban on creating new embryonic stem cell lines. These are stem cell lines that were used for experimentation, and now there have been new lines derived, and then of course they provide an ability for us to see the effect of something like a virus on human cells. The question is whether a new life was taken in the derivation of this vaccine, and whether it was used on basically a human experiment without that person's knowledge. And that seems to be the divide here between what we find in Moderna and Pfizer, and what we see from Pfizer and Moderna, and what's coming out of Oxford here. This complexity gets to a level where it's really hard to talk through all the details, but that's really what's at the heart. Is a new life been created, and that life has been taken in the creation of this vaccine? Or has this vaccine been used unethically, kind of as a human experiment, like what we heard about in the Nuremberg trials when it comes to, full-grown human beings? And that seems to be the ethical divide here between the assessment being made by the Catholic bishops, being made by, among others, the Charlotte Lozier Institute. And people have written very, very helpful assessments of these. For example, the Charlotte Lozier piece is written by David Prentice. David's somebody that I've known and had on the program years ago. He's a top-notch bioethicist, and he's asking the right sort of questions and coming up with, I think, helpful analysis. Andrew Walker, who's a Southern Baptist philosopher, or I don't know he talks and writes about a lot of different things. He does do stuff on ethicist. Sure, yeah, but he understands the ins and outs of this as well from a natural law framework. And I would point everyone to the work that both of these groups have done. First of all, Andrew Walker has written a terrific blog piece on this that walks through what are the concerns, why is it that the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines don't violate those concerns. I don't think his piece actually has to do with the Oxford vaccine because that actually came out just since he wrote that initial piece. But we're getting tons of questions about this. And I would point people to come to breakpoint.org, and we're going to link to all of these studies and all of these analysis because they're really helpful.
Yeah, the top question I think we ought to ask as we're assessing the ethical validity of things like these COVID-19 vaccines is, was evil done in order that good may result? In other words, did the development process of these vaccines employ fetal cells that were already available, or did they actually take lives, new lives, in order to create these vaccines? And it is a complicated ethical issue, but it deals with the basic question of whether we are using human beings, and we believe that from the moment of conception, every individual is fully a human being created in the image of God, though they are not fully developed. Are they using human beings as means to an end or as moral ends in and of themselves? And that's the key question that we have to ask as Christians, because we do honor the sanctity of every human life, and we do believe that no matter how much good could potentially result from the taking of a human life, we should have no part in that. Another question I think is important to ask, John, and we've talked about this before on the program, is could our taking this particular vaccine incentivize or encourage future destruction of human life? So even if we're not necessarily participating in the destruction of new life, I want to know, am I incentivizing this practice in the future? Because we just had a Democratic president elected. He's going to be inevitably much more friendly toward embryonic stem cell, new lines of embryonic stem cell research than the last few Republican presidents have been. So, those are questions we got to ask as we move forward as pro-lifers.
And that are almost impossible questions to answer because as we've seen this last set of questions about what are we inspiring, there's certain things we can know. For example, is something like this inspiring the creation of new fetal stem cell lines that would require the destruction of the embryo? The research that's been incentivized over the last decade or so has proven to be the most effective. This hasn't resulted in the destruction of any embryos. These stem cell lines, particularly through the induced pluripotent cells, have been remarkable. But that's what becomes really ethically hard in these conversations is there is an incurable human appetite for power and the power that science wields. In other words, it falls into the if I can do it, I have to do it sort of category. And it's almost impossible to measure that. And that's why prudence is such an important and missing value when it comes to ethics. Let me just say, here's a good line, and this is in an article from Christian Headlines. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops said this: neither the Pfizer nor the Moderna vaccine involve the use of cell lines that originated in fetal tissue taken from the body of an aborted baby at any level of design, development, or production. And so that's a very clear, succinct statement that when we're talking about fetal cells, we're not always talking about cells taken directly from a tissue that's taken from an aborted baby. Right. That's the difference as far as we can see between that and the Oxford vaccine. I think it's very helpful that the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops has articulated this, that Andrew Walker has gone deep on this issue, and because I understand the concern. We are a culture that tends to prioritize safety over everything else, and including ethics. The ends somehow justify the means, and that cannot be the case.
Yeah, good distinctions. Well, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this to talk about more of the stories of the week from a Christian worldview perspective. Stay with us.
We invite you to visit breakpoint.org, and while you're at our website, be sure to browse our online Colson Center store of books and other resources, and you can find links to our social media sites like Facebook and Twitter.
We're back on Breakpoint this week, talking about the stories of the week from a Christian worldview perspective. John, I just saw the headline today as we record this, which is on Wednesday, that the 11th Circuit in...
Okay, so that's all they had to say. Now, they didn't say as much as I hoped they would say, but I at least wanted you to hear it. So and the reason I wanted you to hear this is because it's further confirmation that at least 2 of the vaccines that don't have any aborted fetal tissue. But what bothered me about their discussion is they didn't deal with a very important question that I think they should have. Right? If you're going to do a podcast talking about it, you have to bring up this issue. So I'm going to throw this out there. I know it's going to make people mad but it's maybe it's all of the years of pursuing and studying philosophy in school, all the different ways I've studied philosophy and pursued philosophy. Maybe it's my philosophical mind coming into play here, but I think it's an important question. Maybe it's not even a philosophical mind. Maybe it's always my desire to try to be consistent. All right. And I'm not always consistent. I fall short. You fall short. We all fall short. But I always try to be as consistent in my thinking as I possibly can. Right. And when you try to be consistent, that sometimes requires trying to be very balanced and looking at two sides of an issue, which is not very popular in 2020 because people want you to be like, you're all the way, you got to pick a side and then that's your side and everyone else is wrong. And I was like, well, sometimes the truth is not on a side. Sometimes the truth is in the middle. And in reality, both sides are shooting at the truth, right? So here's something to consider. And I just want you to think about this, all right? All right. We currently, right now, as we are living here in 2020, people are getting sick and dying. Now, if you're going to go with it's all a fraud and it's all a hoax, okay, that's a whole, then we're going to have a different discussion. But people are getting sick and people are dying. The death toll over 1 million globally, and I want you to understand this, over 1 million globally in less than 12 months. Over 1 million people who were once alive a year ago are now dead because of COVID-19. Now, I understand there's comorbidity and there was other issues that made them more vulnerable to it. I'm not denying that, but they died, and COVID-19 is the leading cause. Other things were contributing factors, but COVID-19 was the leading cause. Without COVID-19, there's a high probability from a human perspective. Now, we can get into the sovereignty of God. I understand that, but from a human perspective, we could at least from a human perspective say there's a chance they would still be alive. All right. But 1 million people here in the United States of America, I'd have to look at the numbers right now, but I think it's close to 250,000 people have died and more are dying. All right. I mean, people are going to continue to die. So at this point, we got to deal with people who are alive right now who are in the danger of being infected and dying. Now, what do we do to stop that? Now, let me go back and all of that long intro now is going to come back to play here. If you are opposed to if you just say do nothing, then you're just like, let people die. That's your solution. Okay, well, wonderful. I don't think that's a very pro-life perspective, right? Because this all comes down to pro-life, right? Pro-life, human life. Well, I will think that's not necessarily a very pro-life perspective, okay? So you don't want to wear a mask. You don't want to social distance, all right? So then what? You don't want a lockdown. So what do you want? Well, then a vaccine is the only solution. So let's just say that a vaccine is produced. Let's say it's the most effective vaccine. Let's say it's 99% effective. It's the one to get. And let's say the vaccine that is produced does contain stem cell and fetal tissue from aborted babies from 30 years ago, 40 years ago. In other words, that these stem cell lines are from aborted babies that happened a very long time ago, and they continue to basically, continue using these stem cell lines. Let's say it's using it from an aborted baby 20 years ago, 30 years ago, right? And this stem cell, this tissue, this how could we say tissue, stem cells, whatever they have taken from that situation. Let's say they utilize it in the vaccine. So it's a baby died, a baby was murdered in abortion 20, 30 years ago. The tissue, the different things were taken from that baby that now produces a vaccine that can save lives right now. Is it unethical to take that vaccine, even though it came from an aborted baby, in order to preserve life right now? Let me use it in a different way. Right? The baby didn't commit the crime, right? The baby the crime was committed against the baby. The baby was murdered. That's what we believe abortion is. It was murdered, correct? It was murdered. Now, from that murder, something is taken from the murdered victim, stem cells, whatever, that is taken, then utilized in a vaccine to preserve and save life right now. The argument is that is unethical. But here's the thing. Let's say I've already mentioned this before, but let's just throw this out there. Let's say your child is in the hospital, right? And they have to have some kind of organ transplant. They are going to die. And they rush in and say, we have an organ transplant. Do you stop and go, wait a minute, where did this organ come from? Well, this person was murdered. Well, they were murdered in an unethical way? Oh, yeah, it was straight murder. In fact, they were shot right in front of the hospital 5 times. We don't even know why. Now, do you say, well, that person was murdered in an unethical way? It would be unethical for my child to take that organ. We don't raise the question that if it's unethical to take the fetal tissue from an aborted baby, right? Then now you can say, well, let's say they produced the baby and killed the baby just in order to take the stem cells. That's evil, and we could talk about how evil that is. But if it still produces something that saves life now, does that change it at all? Right? Like, are we being consistent? Because I don't think anyone who goes, well, wait a minute, this person was murdered. I'm no way that I'm going to allow those organs to be used to save life. Now, I don't think we tend to do that. Now, you could say that typically, obviously, if someone is killed, that the reason we're taking their organs is because they chose to be an organ donor. That does add a little ethical wrinkle into this. But I just want us to think these things through in a bigger way, in a more broader way. I want us to think these through and just ask these difficult questions so that we are at least consistent. All right. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just trying to make sure that you are consistent, because your inconsistency is the thing that sometimes can make Christians look like we are foolish, or make it look like that our claims of being pro-life are not really that accurate, because we violate those very principles time and time again in all kinds of other situations. We can't be pro-life when it's convenient to us, right? And then change our view when it's not convenient. That's not the way. We just have to be consistent. So there's a part of me that says, look, whatever happened, whatever led to that baby being aborted and those stem cells and that tissue being utilized to produce this vaccine, that was wrong and that was evil. But if good can come from it to stop people from dying now, is that a good thing? Now, I don't like the idea of let's just create life in a laboratory, kill that life, and then use that life for experimentation so that we can produce cures and medicine, because then that's producing and destroying life just for the purpose of saving a life down the road. I don't like that. But if it does occur, and then 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road, there's a situation where it can save life, then I'm against what brought it all about initially. But how do I view what it can do now? Now, this would be, a wrong doesn't make a right. I understand that. Here's what I'm trying to do. They didn't raise they raised a lot of questions and said there's all these layers. They didn't really try to pull the layers apart. I'm trying to pull the layers apart and just throw a lot of things at you. So here's what I'm going to say before I play the next clip. I want you to listen to me very carefully. And I'm going to just try to lay this out as specific as I can. Number one, whatever you decide about COVID-19 vaccine, base it off fact, off science, off accurate information. Do not base it off crazed, conspiratorial thinking and made up fraudulent information, in many cases being put out by Christians. Do not make your decision based off fact. Number two, do not be sharing fraudulent and messed up information, because you're putting other people's lives at risk. I remember on Sermon Audio, there was an individual who was on Sermon Audio who told everyone that they must stop getting the flu vaccine, and they should never get the flu vaccine under any circumstance, because the flu vaccine contained chips that was going to be used by the New World Order to track them. All right, when you start hearing Christians say that, and especially older people who can be very vulnerable to the flu and the flu being possibly deadly to them, and they hear some Christian telling them that, then they don't get the vaccine and then they die because they're afraid they're going to get the mark of the beast or get some computer chip put in them. Now that calls that makes Christianity not only unethical, it makes them in a sense involved, culpable for murder. I mean, basically what they're doing is saying, hey, I'm going to put your life at risk because I'm telling you that this contains you're going to end up under the control of the Antichrist if you get the flu vaccine. There are Christians out there who say and post things on the internet about vaccines and other medical issues that are fraudulent and lies. And those Christians are responsible for putting people's lives at risk. If you want to become a doctor, go to medical school, become a doctor, and practice medicine. If you're not an expert on it, don't be giving people medical advice when you don't even know what you're talking about, all because you watched a couple of videos on YouTube or read some pamphlet that someone wrote in her kitchen. Okay, stop it. Right? Don't put people's lives at risk. Right? We cannot do that. If you're pro-life, don't do that. Not only that, if you're pro-truth, don't do that. Now, you can raise questions and you can call for more research and you can look at studies and you can, but then you do everything you can to make sure you're accurate. That's all I'm saying don't make your decision based off fraudulent information and don't be the one spreading fraudulent information, especially if it can put people's lives at risk. Don't do that. How is that radical? I don't even know how, but I'm going to get, it's usually the anti-vaccine people who go absolutely crazy on me, right? And go nuts. And then they start sending me information and you start researching the information. I'm like, that's not accurate. That's fraudulent. And they never come back and apologize for their fraudulent information. It drives me crazy. Factual information. Now, yeah, for every vaccine, is there dangers? There's always dangers in every medicine, everything. Right? I have, where do I have it? I have some Motrin somewhere in a bag around here. I don't know where it is. I was going to grab the bottle of pills and shake it so that you could hear it. And I had to take some because of my headache. But guess what? There's negative side effects taking that. Very negative side effects. See what it does, I think, to your liver, I think to your liver. It can have very negative side effects, taking too much of it. And there's probably on the bottle, I was going to look at the bottle, there's probably some warnings of some possible negative side effects. Because everything can do that. So, and we should, that information should be readily made available and to make your decision. So make your decision based off facts and don't share false information. And this is for Christians. Look, if you're not a Christian, you're going to do whatever you want. I mean, why are you going to try to follow the Bible's teaching about being honest and telling the truth and not bearing false witness? I mean, you're not going to be worried about it. But Christians, you should be. All right, now, there's one other quick thing we have to deal with. There's lots of discussion about, hey, the Pfizer vaccine, I think it's the Pfizer vaccine, has to be stored at this incredibly low temperature. And I keep being told all these reasons why from Christians. So there's a news report about it. I haven't even heard this yet. Let's listen to it. Let's see if they give us a reason. Here we go.
Let's take the temperature, so to speak, of the effort to distribute a vaccine. 2 companies have now announced they have coronavirus vaccines shown to be 90% effective or more. One of them comes from Pfizer and one comes from Moderna. Immediately after the news of Moderna's vaccine broke on Monday, the company gave a presentation to the people who would have to distribute such vaccines. Both of them have to be kept frozen, which means you cannot just ship and store them like other products. A lot of lives rest on how that particular detail is addressed. So NPR's Selena Simmons-Duffin has been looking into it. Good morning.
Good morning, Steve.
Why do the vaccines need to be kept frozen?
Well, both of these vaccine candidates are what's called messenger RNA vaccines, and mRNA is very unstable. So to help explain what that means, here's an analogy. Think of the vaccine like a melty chocolate bar. To stabilize the vaccines, these drug companies used modified building blocks or nucleosides, which would kind of be like changing the chocolate recipe so it's less melty.
And not
and then
on
they
my
coated
5-year-old's
it.
fingers quite as much. Okay, go on.
Right. So then they coated it with something called lipid nanoparticles. Margaret Liu explained this to me. She's a vaccine researcher who chairs the board of the International Society for Vaccines.
That formulation helps protect the RNA. It's kind of like putting your chocolate inside a candy coating and you have an M&M so the chocolate doesn't melt.
So then the freezing is also done to protect the RNA and make the vaccine more stable. It's the same concept as freezing food so it doesn't spoil. Although only Pfizer's vaccine requires ultra cold conditions. That is minus 70 degrees Celsius, which is extremely cold, colder than winter in Antarctica, and that presents challenges.
Wow, yeah. One of them would be a normal freezer. The other would be this extreme freezing situation. Why would that be?
Well, we don't really know. The data isn't public. All we have is these companies' statements. Moderna says that its vaccine can be distributed at minus 20 degrees Celsius, which is as regular freezer temperature. Once it's thawed, it can be refrigerated for up to a month, and you can even leave it at room temperature for 12 hours. The Pfizer vaccine is more complicated because it has to be stored at ultra-cold temperatures, and the company will use specialty shipping containers that can be refreshed with dry ice. But once the vaccine's thawed, it only lasts in the refrigerator for 5 days.
What are the implications of those freezing requirements?
So what this means is that immunization managers who are in each and every state are expecting they're likely going to get both of these vaccines, and they'll have to figure out where to send them, probably to different kinds of places. So Christine Finley is the vaccine manager in Vermont. She's still finalizing the state's vaccination plan. She told me it might make sense to send the Pfizer vaccine, which comes in huge quantities and requires the dry ice and the specialty freezers, to be sent to big population centers.
If you have a large university where you're going to be able to reach a larger number of people, that would make sense that you might consider distributing your ultra cold there. And then in areas where it might be more difficult to use up such a large order, or they may not have the storage, you've now got another option.
She says especially at first when there are limited doses, they need and want as much stock of vaccine as they can get.
When there are limited doses, they'll go, not to the general population at first, right?
Right. The first limited doses will go to frontline health workers. They're the people most at risk. And then other groups like seniors and people with conditions that make them more likely to get seriously sick. And the general public will get it likely many months after that, which is why public health experts are frantically trying to get the message across that people still need to social distance and hand wash and wear masks, especially now that the virus is spreading so much across the country.
NPR's Selena Simmons-Duffin, thanks for your reporting.
Thank you.
Now, there you have it. They give us kind of a reason. Basically, it's got to be kept at a cold temperature to keep it stable and because of some of the things going on within the vaccine. But they mentioned a very important word, messenger RNA. Messenger RNA vaccine. Now, this has been talked about in a lot of Christian podcasts, that the messenger RNA is going to rewrite your DNA, and that this is going to be the thing that will be then ultimately will basically help control you, and then activated by 5G and all the different things going on. But let me give you some basic, if you don't know anything about messenger RNA, let me give you some basic information, all right? Messenger RNA vaccines, if I can speak correctly here. Messenger RNA vaccines are also called mRNA vaccines. You may hear it referred to as a messenger RNA vaccine, or you may also hear it referred to as a mRNA vaccine. And they are going to be the first COVID-19 vaccines authorized for use in the United States. So the COVID-19 vaccines that are going to be authorized, the very first ones, are going to be mRNA vaccines or messenger RNA vaccines. Now, what is a messenger RNA vaccine? All right. You can think of a messenger RNA vaccine as kind of a new approach to vaccines. They take an approach that is different than previous vaccines. Let's explore this and at least get a basic understanding here, right? And I'm giving you a basic understanding. You feel free to speak to your doctor or medical professionals in regards to this. I would say medical professionals, you may want to avoid conspiratorial websites that make up information. You may want to seek some health care. And one of my benefits of working in the medical world for 22 years is I could always just walk down the hall and talk to any doctor I wanted. And we had lots of discussions about a lot of conspiratorial things that I would hear. All right. So here's some basic information. mRNA vaccines, or messenger RNA vaccines, are a new type of vaccine to protect against infectious diseases. To trigger an immune response, many vaccines put a weakened or an inactivated germ into our bodies, not mRNA vaccines. Instead, they teach our cells how to make a protein, or even just a piece of a protein that triggers an immune response inside our bodies. That immune response, which produces antibodies, is what protects us from getting infected if the real virus enters our bodies. So let me explain this again, just so that you understand when you hear this terminology, you have some idea of what's going on. An mRNA vaccine is a new type of vaccine to protect against infectious diseases. To trigger an immune response, many vaccines put a weakened or inactivated germ into your body, not mRNA vaccines. Instead, they teach your cells how to make a protein, or even just a piece of a protein, that triggers an immune response inside your body. That immune response, which produces antibodies, is what protects us from getting infected if the real virus enters our bodies. That is what happens. Here's a little bit more information, all right? COVID-19 mRNA vaccines give instructions for our cells to make a harmless piece of what is called the spike protein. The spike protein is found on the surface of the virus that causes COVID-19. COVID-19 mRNA vaccines are given in the upper arm muscle. Once the instructions mRNA are inside the muscle cell, the cells use them to make the protein piece. After the protein piece is made, the cell breaks down the instructions and gets rid of them. Next, the cell displays the protein piece on its surface. Our immune system recognizes that the protein doesn't belong there and begins building an immune response and making antibodies, like what happens in natural infections against COVID-19. At the end of the process, our bodies have learned how to protect against future infection. The benefit of mRNA vaccines, like all vaccines, is those vaccinated gain this protection without ever having to risk the serious consequences of getting sick with COVID-19. Right? Here are some facts you need to know. All right? The facts about COVID-19 mRNA vaccines. They cannot give someone COVID-19. mRNA vaccines do not use live viruses that cause COVID-19. Let me hear that. Let me make sure you hear that. They do not use live viruses that cause COVID-19. Therefore, they cannot give someone COVID-19. They don't use a live virus. Right? Make sure you understand that. Number two, they do not affect or interact with our DNA in any way. mRNA never enters the nucleus of the cell, which is where our DNA genetic material is kept. The cell breaks down and gets rid of the mRNA soon after it's finished using the instructions. Now, that is the medical information as of right now. I'm all for that medical information being challenged. I'm all for that medical information being questioned. And I'm all for medical peer review research being done. And if they call into question or later produce something that says that was wrong or fraudulent, then it needs to be, I will turn on the microphone and give that information. Now, Christian podcasts are claiming all of that is fraudulent. They basically are claiming all of that is fraudulent. It does interact with our DNA. It rewrites our DNA. It's going to make us less than human. Some are claiming it will give people COVID-19. It's going to kill people. All the claims that they're making. I'm saying that's the medical information as we have it as of right now. Now, that could change, right? I mean, we're still in the process here. There's going to be a lot of information. Look, here's what we know is going to happen. Listen, there are going to be negative reactions to the COVID-19 vaccine. There's going to be, just the way it works, All right. It's going to happen. So guess what? Once you start giving vaccinations to millions of people, we want and hope the scientific medical community will research all of the negative consequences, and they will immediately report those. And if it becomes dangerous, then that information, we have to wait and see. But you can't just rely on, hey, someone made a podcast and said, hey, this was created by aliens and the Illuminati to destroy you and make you lose consciousness and wake up in Area 51 so that you get on the mothership and you go back to Planet X, where you'll then be, completely remade into the image of the alien god and then sent back here to promote that alien god and basically help, colonize the world for the ultimate alien god. I know all that sounds crazy, but that's about how far-fetched things can get out there in the internet world. All I'm saying is there's some medical information. Am I telling you to go with that dogmatically? And I know what I'm telling you is seek out truth. All right? Make your decision based off factual information. Don't share fraudulent information. All right? Research, but make the best decision based off facts. And don't, look, if you just don't want to get the vaccine because you don't want to get the vaccine, then don't try to create some ethical reason. Don't try to give yourself some ethical justification. Sometimes we create an ethical reason and an ethical justification for why we will and why we will do something or not do something, and we really don't care about the ethics. We just don't want to do it. And then we say, well, I can't do it because of this. It's like a teenager coming up with, I can't do that because that would be wrong. They don't care about wrong. They just don't want to do whatever there is to do. Don't cover your reasons for doing something in a robe of fraudulent righteousness or fraudulent ethical concerns. Just be honest with your reason. Just be honest. Like here, I'll give you an example. There's a pastor in Louisiana. And his case just got thrown out by the Supreme Court because he won't go along with all the COVID restrictions. Okay, and so early on, this was very early on when all of this was going on. He was one of the first major pastors who basically said, "No, we're not following the rules." Even though I disagreed with him, I admired him so much. And here's the reason I admired him: there was all these reporters there in Louisiana. They're sticking the cameras in his face, and they're saying, "Hey, why are you not following the rules?" And he looked at the camera and said, hey, if a business closed down, they can't make any money. And if they don't make any money, they don't exist anymore. Well, as a church, the way we make money is having people here to give. And if people here and they don't give, then we can't keep these doors open and this church is going to close down. We need people here to give money. And now you could say that was so fleshly but it was so honest. Like, he didn't sit there and go, you know what, we're going to keep the doors open because we can't forsake the assembly and try to act all biblical. He just straight up said, we need money. And I stated so many times that I thought many of the drive-in services were more about money than they were about anything else, because for all those drive-in services, guess what they did? They had people going, now I can't say for all of them, but most of the ones I saw video, they were going door to door to door with a basket to get that offering. Because why would you need people to come to your parking lot and sit in a car when you're, in some cases, inside the church or trying to stand out there with this really horrible sound or trying to broadcast your sermon over an FM transmitter so that people can sit in the car and listen? Why don't you sit at home and listen and just make it simple for everyone? But no, they needed the cars there because they needed to go to those cars to get money, right? Ching, ching, get that money. Well, just admit it. I need you here because we need money. Like, don't cover it in a fake robe of righteousness. Don't do that. So if you have an ethical concern, make sure it's a true ethical concern. If you just don't want to get it because you're scared or you're nervous or you don't trust it, you don't trust the pharmaceutical company, you don't trust the government, okay, then just say it. But then don't try to justify it with fraudulent information, fake information. Don't do that. Just be honest. All right? And I'm going to be honest with you. I'm worried. Listen, I'll use myself as an example. I'm worried about the vaccine because of what happened to me with the anthrax vaccine. All right? I'm worried about it. And so therefore my experience is the number one motivating factor about what I do. That's not the right way to think. My experience with one vaccine is not the way to interpret my future experiences with other vaccines. That's not the way to do so. That's not how I should search out facts. And guess what? My experience with a vaccine should not be the determinant factor in what I tell other people to do with a vaccine, because my experience is not the truth for everyone and for all vaccines. That's a fraudulent way of thinking. There's logical fallacies there. My experience does not equal truth. It equals what happened to me, not what will happen to everyone else. Right? And so you can't do that. It's like so back in 1972, I went to the doctor, and that doctor was an idiot, and he gave me wrong medication. I almost died. So now I don't go to doctors anymore because they're all idiots. Okay, well, that's I want to say that's brilliant, but I'm being sarcastic. That's foolish. You had one experience does not mean then everyone should base their decision off your experience. You had a bad experience, a negative experience, a horrible experience. That's one. That doesn't mean that's how all doctors operate. That doesn't mean how medicine works. That means that hopefully that experience will be used by the medical world to improve. That's what you hope. All right. So and you can say, well, pharmaceutical companies have, financial reasons for doing so. Okay, let's say that that's true. Let's say that's true. So much of what you purchase is purchased by companies who have a financial reason for doing so. And guess what these pharmaceutical companies want? They want their vaccine to work. And they want people to get their vaccine, or there is no financial upside to it. All right, they got to have the vaccines work. If the vaccine's killing everyone, people stop getting their vaccine. All right, I think you could look at it from that perspective as well. Now, I agree, and I'm just trying to throw out everything that people will say to me. Look, I think so frequently in America, I think sometimes we rely on drugs and medications for everything. As soon as we have the first problem, pill, shot, drug. And I think sometimes we should look for other avenues of treatment that doesn't involve drugs, narcotics, opioids, whatever the case may be, and look for other avenues. But at the same time, seeking out truthful and accurate information. I've seen people say, hey, use this to fix this allergy. And then you go do 5 seconds of research and go, that's fraudulent. That's proven not to help. And you're out there telling people the way they should fix their allergy is with this. It's a lie. You don't be the one out there promoting a lie. No. That's not what we do. All right. So there we have it. I wanted to get that all out of the way in one long episode. And well, look, I'm going to continue to follow it. And as soon as more information is available, we'll talk about it. Look, I don't have people may say, so you're pro-vaccine, I'm not pro, I'm not anti. You know what I am? I'm pro-truth. I know I say that every time and people don't get it. Are you left or are you right? Are you conservative or I'm truth. I pursue truth. I am truth. I'm on the side of truth. That's the wrong way to say that. God is true. God is truth. I'm not truth. I am pursuing truth. I'm on the side of truth. That's the right way to say that. Okay, so when it comes to I just want truth. Just want truth, and I want Christians to pursue truth and stop sharing fraudulent information. All right. Wow, that took a long time. There you have it. You have emails that if you have emails you want to send, if you have a message that you want to put in an email and send me the email, you can do so at newsif@yahoo.com. Newsif@yahoo.com. That's newsif@yahoo.com. All right. Everyone have a great day. God bless.